All right, let's get into it, everyone. It is week number 9 of high school football here in Northeast Ohio. We welcome you to our 3 News High School Football Game of the Week selection show. I'm Dave DeNatale. That's Tyler Carey. As we said, next to last week of the regular season, we had 3 games on the docket here for this week, TC, that all have important playoff and conference game implications. It was a close vote. I mean, we at several
really
times
went down to the wire up to this afternoon.
Yeah, but in the end, we are going to
Portage County. We are headed to Aurora, where the Greenmen will host the Revere Minutemen, a suburban league matchup. Now, Dino, on the surface, this doesn't look like a very good game. Aurora sitting at 8-0, Revere at 4-4, but Revere has shown all year that they can compete with these bigger schools, and it's also a huge game as far as their playoff implications go. They win this, they're right back in it. I think they're going to be in the top 8 and maybe potentially get into the postseason.
Yeah, this is a must-win game. We'll start first with the Minutemen, and then obviously there's so much to talk about with Aurora. But we looked at this game, coming into it because Revere is in Region 10, that Division III Region 10. They are 1 spot out of the playoff race. If the postseason were to start today, they are 9th, right behind River Valley from Caledonia. I don't know where Caledonia is.
I think I've looked a few times, maybe Ottawa County, I'm not even sure. I need
but
to
you've
look
got
it up
some
at
good
some
teams in Region 10, including the Norwalk, Mansfield, Sandusky. But you've got Bay in there. You've got Holy Name, Buckeye. A lot of local teams are going to be kind of watching how this game unfolds Friday night. It's a must-win for Revere. And for Aurora, on the flip side, for Bob Mahalick's Greenmen, they're undefeated. They're having an Aurora-type season. This is what we're used to seeing from the Greenmen. I mean, last year they were only 7-3, and they narrowly missed the playoffs. But we're accustomed to seeing them have these really strong regular seasons, and they're having one now. And with the exception of a CVCA game earlier this year and a 1-point win over Padua. And by the way, that Padua team, you talk about a tough out. I don't care anybody who plays Padua this year. That's a tough win.
Well, even Hoban had a little bit of a tough time with them last week. We'll get to that in a little bit. But hey, you mentioned this. Aurora's really grown, I think.
Yeah, they've steamrolled the last 5 weeks. They've played really, really well.
And against good competition. I mean, Kent Roosevelt was a potential playoff team. Aurora beat them 41-0. And then Barberton, who we saw last week against Massillon,
played very well last week, I thought.
They're a decent team, and they beat them by 24 points. So when you see how much this Aurora team has grown from, okay, you're barely winning these games against CVCA and Padua, good teams, but not exactly world beaters, to where now you're just rolling over the competition, it certainly bodes well, not just for this week, but for their playoff chances down the road.
I mean, Aurora basically, they're not locked in at this point.
No.
I mean, they're third. They don't control their own destiny. But, I mean, if the postseason started today, they would be hosting, which is what they in Week 11. Veterans Stadium is one of the toughest environments to win, especially, in early November when it starts getting cold and chilly. But they are right behind Streetsboro, are the Greenmen, and just out in front of Steubenville. And then you've got Kenston lurking and Chardon lurking at 5 and 6. So you don't want to stub your toe. I mean, you're trying to wrap up a conference championship, a division title. You don't want to stub your toe, though, in the playoff chase here, too. They want to be home in Week 11. They don't want to have to take a long road trip to Steubenville or to New Philadelphia or anything like that. So this is an important game for the Greenmen.
Absolutely. And on the flip side for Revere, I mean, sitting at 4-4, they're kind of sandwiched in between all those teams. Like you said, River Valley right ahead of them. Right behind them, Norton sitting at 4-4. Yeah. Glenville 5-3. The problem with Glenville is they kind of have that weak Senate League schedule that's not going to help them in the computer
points are
rankings.
Hard to come by.
Exactly. Yeah. And with Revere, among those 8 through 11 teams, they actually have the highest ceiling. If they went out, their max possible point percentage would be about 23.5. Maybe just a little bit above 23, which is far and away
That'll get you in.
more than all these other teams because they're playing Aurora.
Yeah.
You win this game, I don't see how you miss the playoffs unless somehow you stub your toe in Week 10, and even then, you might still sneak in.
Yeah, it's a huge, huge matchup. And outvoted, we had both Menor and Euclid, a key game, obviously, in Region 1.
Could be the game of the year.
Could be the game of the year. We had that for you, and we also had Hudson and Stowe, two teams who are also trying to get into the playoffs and have comeback years. So, we gave you three tough ones to vote on. Congrats to Aurora and the Revere. We're excited about it. But as we start looking ahead now to the top 5 and who's the kind of the best of the bunch right now here, Tyler, and what we're looking at, I can't imagine there were too many changes. I think I wrote this week on my poll status quo because I think we had one of those types of weeks where some of the top teams, as we'll go, they were challenged a little bit. They were hammered a little bit, but they were able to hang on and do their thing and prevail in the second half.
Absolutely. Well, one team that wasn't challenged at all was our unanimous number 1, and that was the Mentor Cardinals, beating Shaker Heights on Saturday afternoon by a score of 45-7. That's actually the last time they will play as members of the Greater Cleveland Conference.
Right.
Shaker is leaving after the season. Kind of a ho-hum 45-7 game for Mentor, if there is such a thing. They had 240 rush yards as a team. Brian Trobel had 117 yards and a touchdown. The big thing for them is basically the poll watch, which we're going to get to right now. First in the AP poll in the state. We knew that already. National Prep Poll still has them first in all the Midwest. They're second in the Midwest in USA Today behind Male Senior High School in Louisville. Louisville Male High School. So it's really between those two teams, 1 and 2. The national rankings, though, that's the big thing. USA Today, they remain 16th. National Prep Poll, they move up to 14th. Max Prep's Excellent 25, that's their human poll. They're up to 13th, so they're moving up in most of these polls. High School Football America, they're 12th. However, Max Prep's Freeman rankings, these are the computer rankings. It's all about, what the numbers say.
Analytics.
Despite winning by 38 points, they dropped Dino from 8th to 10th, which is kind of infuriating, but you get it.
Yeah, I wonder what a win over Euclid would mean, though. This is for me, except for St. Edward and St. Ignatius, this is the toughest of the year for Mentor.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
And we saw how they were able to beat those teams early in the year. They may have to end up playing them again, especially St. Edward down the road. We know what happened with that last year. But we see that one note, by the way, in the national polls, the top 1 and 2 in the country, Mater Dei and St. John Bosco out of California, are going to play each other this week.
Oh, that's
going to be getting some national attention.
Interesting to watch.
However, I'm not sure that even if they lose that game, they may not even fall below
wouldn't
Mentor.
be a significant drop.
No.
I wouldn't think.
But it is something to keep an eye on. Is that it's very rare that a team that doesn't go undefeated wins a national championship.
Right.
So if some of these teams above Mentor lose, and you got to think that they will, they're going to have a shot to at least be in that conversation.
Right. They can go 15-0 schedule in Division I. You got to be at least in the top 5 in the country.
In this state,
you got to be. But that's for a debate. We'll get to that. The number 2 team we just got done seeing Friday night in our game of the week.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The Massillon Tigers. Kind of a tough game. I think a little bit closer than we expected.
Yes.
They did end up pulling away. They beat Barberton 49-24, but it was at one point a 3-point game just before, or a 5-point game just before the half.
Yeah, the 21-16 with about 2 minutes to go after Barberton got the pick 6, and the stadium was electric, and you're sitting there going, well, if they can get to halftime only down 5, to talk about the Magics, they've got something here. And I just thought that score before halftime really just kind of took the starch out of the Magics. And as I talked to Nate Moore after the game, he said, it just felt like the offensive line of the Tigers really in the second half asserted control of the game, and they were able to get Terrence Keys really going, and that was a big impact in the game. Massillon's got to clean up the mistakes. I mean, that was one thing that I took away from them. And
they weren't very. What was it? It seemed like they had at least 3 or 4 unsportsmanlike conducts in that game.
At least,
I mean,
you
gotta be disciplined, especially when you get down the road to possibly playing in a state championship game or in a regional final against Hoban.
Got to be you have to be almost letter perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Terrence Keys Jr. was the star of that show, by the way. 5 touchdowns, 255 yards.
I thought he might get to 300 the way they were going. Finally, Nate took him out in the fourth quarter, but Keys was terrific. I really enjoyed watching him play. He was great.
Massillon gets a solid Louisville team this week before they have to take on McKinley in Week 10. Have fun with that. St. Edward clocks in at number 3. Now, they beat Clarkson North out of the Ontario area. Notable in that was a team that beat St. Ignatius by a point earlier this year. Ed only led by 9 at the half in this game. They ended up pulling away and won by 27. So in the end, it works out. Joey Fermani, Mackenzie Wright each had 3 touchdowns each. They are now getting some love in the national polls with their second AP poll in the state. In the Midwest, they're starting to get some rankings, and they're kind of in the teens or in the high 20s in some of these national polls.
A 1-point loss to Menor is giving them some respect, and that's good. I have no issue with that. I think they've, by the margin of a safety is the reason why they're not undefeated right now.
Not only that, and they have the benefit that Menor doesn't have. They're an independent team,
correct.
So they can play some of these really good out-of-state schools, and they've gotten some really good wins out of state this year. And that's what
out of country too.
Yes, out of country now too. That's what kind of hurts Menor, is that they're kind of stuck with that GCC schedule. Not that it's a bad schedule.
No, it's a good year.
But it's not going to get you that national recognition that some of these wins at St. Edward will have. And they have to almost kind of wonder, had they been able to hang on and beat Menor that first week, maybe you could be in that discussion for a national championship.
What that could have meant. I would imagine the aforementioned Archbishop Hoban standing strong at 4.
Absolutely, they are. They beat Padua 44-6. Now they only led this game 14-6 at halftime. You were surprised as
so as at virtually the exact same time that it's Maslin leading Barberton 21-16. Also in Division II, Mark Munch Bishop texts me because he was calling that Hoban Padua game, and he's, if I can do it in Munchies, brother, you won't believe it's 14-6 at the half. And I'm like, wow. I mean, that really, to hold Hoban down like that is pretty impressive. But Tim Terrell has a way of getting the most out of the guys and picking them up when they've had adversity. And I think it was good that they had a quarter or so where they were struggling. They were able to kind of pick things up and play well in the second half.
Yeah, unfortunately for Padua, I think we all knew that wasn't going to last, and eventually the talent was going to pull away. Victor Dawson, for the second week in a row, 3 touchdowns. He is DeMonte Trainum's backup.
Yes.
And Trainum's the one who's going to Arizona State and maybe the best player in all of Northeast Ohio right now. Tells you how deep that they are, that even when they lose all these top-flight guys,
they're still loading
up. Powerhouse next year.
Yeah, they're still loading up.
You don't rebuild, we reload. I screwed that up. Dang it. All right. Number 5, the Avon Eagles. They got a very nice win over North Ridgeville, 48-13. Kind of another ho-hum win for them. We mentioned that the running back was out with the injury. Joey Lance stepping up, getting 2 rushing touchdowns.
That's big for them.
Yeah, to show that, again, here they are reloading, and maybe that they can still make that run in the playoffs once they get there. And they get Olmsted Falls this week. That's going to be a big one.
Which Bulldogs team is going to show up? The one that was undefeated and playing well, or the one that got just annihilated by Midview?
Which just looks more shocking by the day.
I'm not sure. I mean, they traditionally play Avon tough, but this is one you would think the Eagles should win. But I've had them as a top 5 team all year long. They've played well since that Avon Lake game. This is one that, you're Avon, you should be able to handle them and handle Amherst next week and get into the postseason 10-0 and be hosting in week 11. But, again, if Olmsted Falls has a good effort, that they're capable of, they can give Avon some problems.
It will be interesting to see, though, because Avon really hasn't had a test since getting Avon Lake in that first week. Now, Avon Lake may be as good a win as anybody's had this year.
I agree.
And that's why I moved them up into my top 5 this week, even though Mayfield did win. We'll get to them in a second.
I think Avon Lake's playing as well as anybody right now, in especially certainly on the west side of Cleveland. I think they're playing at Matt Kostelnik has them playing at a very high level right now.
Could meet Avon again in the playoffs, but again, now you have to deal with Olmsted Falls and Amherst, 2 very good teams.
Yeah.
Is there a bit of a drop-off when they have to play these top-flight talented teams? I still think they're going to be the favorites.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's interesting, though, and I'll be curious as we're out in Aurora this week to hear how that game goes. But boy, you're right. Avon, Olmsted Falls, Avon Lake are your top 3 in Region 6.
That's deep.
And then you got Wadsworth, Brecksville, Maple Heights, coming off a loss, by the way.
Yeah.
Benedictine, and then Worcester. And with Amherst still alive at number 9, and Barberton. And I thought this after the game. I was wondering. I didn't think Barberton was going to fall that much. They only went. I think they went from 9th to 10th.
The only reason they fell was because Worcester, of the 4 or 5 teams directly behind them, Worcester was the only team that won. And the only reason they jumped Barberton was because they beat Mansfield, who was undefeated.
Right.
So that's going to get you the computer points and pop you into the top 8. But it's going to be interesting to see how it happens down the stretch here. But then, Avon with those 2 big tests, all hoping for playoff positioning themselves. it'll be fun to see what happens.
You may have some rematches in Week 11 and maybe even in Week 12 in Region 6. I mean, you might, like you could see an Avon-Amherst game playing each other 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have Wadsworth and Brecksville play each other. I mean, it sets up some interesting matchups as we look ahead to the playoffs. Now, in Region 5, Division 2, the game of the night was Mayfield.
Which was a game that we covered last year when Mayfield went to Riverside hoping to clinch a playoff spot. They ended up getting in anyway, even though they lost. So they were trying to avenge that defeat. Well, they were down to Painesville Riverside, unbeaten Mayfield, down to Riverside most of the night. Mayfield ends up winning 2017 in overtime, and I got to think that is a huge, gut check win.
Because now the Wildcats stay third in Region 5. And remember, I mean, you've got Massillon and Hoban in front of you. The one thing you don't want to do is, you want to be home in Week 11.
Absolutely.
So, keeps them ahead of Perry, keeps them ahead of Hudson. I mean, and it's really, by the way, those four are the top teams. I mean, there's, Mayfield, by the fact that they won, I think even if the Wildcats might lose to Kenston in Week 10, let's say, I still think they might host because of the gap between they and then number 5 in Hudson. So, but that was a big win. If they had lost to Riverside, and then let's say they had lost to Kenston, that would have been huge for the Wildcats. Now, they basically are in the playoffs. They know they're in, and they've got a real good shot at hosting in Week 11, no matter how they finish up these last 2 weeks.
Yeah, so if you can win that first game, you get a little bit of momentum. Maybe, just maybe, you can pull off an upset against one of those big teams. But again, like you said, great adversity. Great by them to overcome adversity and come back to win that game.
But I'll give Dave Boris and Riverside credit. I mean, that was not giving up and playing real tough. I wouldn't expect any less, but that was, hearing that, I was not surprised. I mean, Riverside, despite the fact they're 4-4 and 13th in the region, they gave it all they had.
Absolutely. Now, a few other side notes. New Philadelphia is the number 1 team now in Division 3. They're in that deep Region 9 that we've been talking about. Led by quarterback Baron May, who's an Eastern Michigan commit. They won again. They're now 8-0. Good for New Philly there. Some recruiting notes from this week. I'm going to try to do this more as we go on. Deshaun Jones, quarterback out of Akron East, he was committed to Luke Fickell at Cincinnati. He has decommitted from the Bearcats, has reopened his search. He at one point had about 16 offers from schools, including from Michigan and Penn State. So we'll be looking to see where that goes. Also, one guy who has committed, Sam Dogstrup, the tight end out of St. Ignatius. He has committed to Indiana. He will be playing for Tom Allen and the Hoosiers. So good for him, headed to the Big Ten. Also, I wanted to bring this up with you real quick before we go. Out of the Senate League, this was kind of more of not as much a football story, but it does affect the Senate League. We learned last week that Collinwood and Glenville looks like they're going to be merging if the CMSD has its way. Going to be very... because we've been talking about how Glenville's kind of been dropping off the last couple of years. They're now Division 3.
Yeah, the number, the enrollment's going down a little bit. Yeah, that would be interesting to see. A little surge of reinforcements for Glenville for that program. That would be interesting to see if that happens.
I think I've looked at if they were to combine that they would go up to Division 2. And
I think so.
It's kind of sad because you remember what the Senate League used to be, what all these Cleveland schools used to be, and really it's been Glenville and everybody else for years.
But even I can remember, it was like you talked about the best school, the best teams in Northeast Ohio. It was, you would mention Glenville in the same breath as Mentor, St. Ignatius, and St. Edward, and it's not been that for a couple of years, and perhaps that would help get them back to that point. So, all right, so a lot of interesting storylines here as we get you ready for week number 9. And again, Tyler mentioned a second ago talking about New Philly. This Region 9 that we're going to be spotlighting on Friday with Aurora is unbelievably good with Streetsboro, New Philadelphia, Steubenville, Aurora, Kenston, Chardon, Ravenna, and also St. Vincent St. Mary. Those would be your 8 playoff teams. You get to the Final Four, you've earned it out of that region. So we'll be spotlighting certainly though Aurora and Revere Friday night. That is our WKYC.com high school football game of the week, and you'll be keeping us posted on some of these other big games across the area.
Can't wait. Really looking forward to it. Cannot believe we're already in week 9.
I know.
And that the playoffs are Just around the corner.
2 weeks from Friday, folks, we start playoff football. And, of course, we will have playoff football for you every Friday from now through the state championships on WKYC.com. So we're very excited about that. And D-Man, I'm also, last plug, Dennis Maniloff is scheduled to be back with me Friday night as my partner. I'm looking forward to having the D-Man back. We'll snag him away from the radio side of things. And we'll be at Veterans Stadium Friday. Aurora hosting Revere. Critical game for both teams as we look ahead to the playoffs. So I hope you'll join us. We'll be on the air about 6:50 right here on Facebook Live, on YouTube, on your 3 News app, and, of course, at WKYC.com. TC, as always, my friend, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dino.
And we thank you so much for watching the WKYC.com High School Football Game of the Week Selection Show. It's Revere at Aurora this week. We'll see you there. Thanks, everybody.